I am so excited to introduce you to Kaira Jewel Lingo. Kaira Jewel is a Dharma teacher with a lifelong interest in spirituality and social justice. She's the author of the book We Were Made for These Times, 10 Lessons in Moving Through Change, Loss, and Disruption. Her work continues the engaged Buddhism developed by Thich Nhat, and she draws inspiration from both her parents' lives of service and from her father's work with Dr. Martin Luther King. After living as an ordained nun for 15 years in Thich Nhat Hanh's monastic community, Kaira Jewel now teaches internationally in the Zen lineage and the Vipassana tradition, as well as in secular mindfulness. She's based in New York with her husband, Adam Bucko, and they offer online spiritual mentoring, as well as a monthly Buddhist Christian community of meditation and action. This is a group that's designed to deepen our understanding and application of the very rich and diverse Buddhist and Christian contemplative practices and how they can support our engaged spirituality. And I direct you to her website, which is www.kairajewel.com. That's Kaira Jewel, Jewel, all one word, .com. You can find her teaching schedule and her writings there, which I feel sure you'll want to check out as soon as you've gotten a taste of her love and wisdom today. In her talk today, she'll be sharing her personal stories of practicing Zen teachings and how she and many others learned to touch true happiness and to heal suffering because of that. She'll also lead us in practicing a practice called touching the earth. This is the Plum Village, Thich Nhat Hanh's Plum Village contemplative practice for connecting with our ancestors and all of life in order to touch our interdependence and our inner being. We'll also have time for questions and conversation. So please join me in very warmly welcoming Kaira Jewel Lingo. Thank you.
Thank you so
Great.
much.
Right. So good to see you, Kaira
You
Jewel.
too, you too. I
Thank you.
realize I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Will you tell me?
Jana. Yeah.
Jana. Okay, and
Yeah.
mine is Kaira. So
Kaira. Okay,
Kaira, yeah,
good.
like
Perfect.
Cairo in Egypt. Yeah. Thank you,
Great.
Jana.
Kaira. So sorry for
Yeah, no,
that.
that's
Thank you
okay.
for
You can't
correcting
always
me.
tell by the spelling, so I wanted to
Especially with
check
a bit of a
yours.
Southern accent.
That's it.
So,
That's it.
all right, good. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much,
Thank
Kaira
you.
Jewel.
Thank you so much for having me and for putting on this beautiful summit. Um, I imagine you all have received a lot of wisdom already, and you might be feeling a little bit full in your hearts and minds. So I thought, with all the good wisdom that's been coming through, why don't we just take a few breaths together and pause for a moment? We always do this in our Plum Village tradition. We start by just connecting with the body, with what's here and now, letting the attention flow downwards from the mind and into the heart, into the belly, into the body. So just give us a few breaths, time for really feeling the in-breath, really feeling the out-breath. If you like, you can close your eyes. Maybe you feel the movement of the chest as you breathe. maybe even the rise and fall of the belly. If you allow the abdomen to relax, just sensing the motion of the breath. Letting the face release its muscles, the shoulders, the arms, the back. Bringing your awareness also down into the legs and the feet. Breathing the 3 deepest breaths you've breathed all day as we are aware of the whole body now. Letting the breath reach all the way down into the abdomen and slowly flow out with the exhale. Really appreciating that we are alive in this moment. What a gift this is to be alive, to be able to breathe, to be able to feel our body. What a blessing. Thank you for taking that mindful pause together. Hope it helps us be ready to receive more, more input. So I basically want to tell some stories about my teacher, some personal stories and some stories about how he lived and how he really embodied engaged contemplation. So I grew up in a Christian community and got interested in college in yoga, meditation, in the Hindu yogic tradition. I was really into my studies and thought I would do a PhD. And while I was finishing, I did a master's and bachelor's, a bachelor's and master's at the same time. I heard a talk by Ram Dass, a teacher from the US who had become a teacher under a Hindu teacher in India. And he said something that really struck me as he visited us on campus. He said, "You learn a lot here, but you don't learn how to be happy." This was at Stanford University. And that really struck me. I was like, yeah, I've learned a lot here. And I haven't learned how to handle my own suffering. I don't know why I suffer. I don't know how not to keep myself from creating suffering for others. So I really decided to look for a spiritual teacher and a community because I wanted to learn how to be happy. So I decided to travel after I graduated, and I went to India for 3 months, visited ashrams, stayed with friends, and then I decided to go to the Plum Village monastery in France, Thich Nhat Center, for their summer month-long retreat. My friend in college was planning to go, so I decided to go as well, and that was in 1997. And when I first met Thai, and we call Thich Nhat Hanh, Thai means teacher in Vietnamese. It was my first time at a Buddhist retreat center. I didn't know anything about this practice, and I actually a little nervous when I got there, that I had signed up for the whole month, and I thought, let me just pay for the first 2 weeks in case I don't like it. And but then as soon as I saw Thai giving the first Dharma talk, I just knew he was my teacher. And it was this unexplainable feeling of recognition, of deep trust. And I also saw that I had found the community that I was searching for, because I experienced this group of monastic and lay people as genuinely doing their best to apply the teachings that Thai gave. So not only did I stay the whole month, but I canceled my plans to travel around Europe the rest of the fall, and I stayed another 4 months in Plum Village up until Christmas. And that's when I thought, wow, I think I want to do this all the time. This is so important, this cultivating my mind, learning how to work with these more subtle parts of me that I haven't been taught how to work with. And so I did ordain 2 years later when I was 25. And so as I listened to Thai's talks, as I practiced, from waking up till going to sleep, that was the idea in this tradition, was to be mindful every moment of the day. This beautiful teaching in Christianity to pray without ceasing. That was the kind of equivalent in the Buddhist tradition, is to be awake, to know what you're doing. Whether you're brushing your teeth, going to the bathroom, cooking, sweeping, having a conversation, about to get irritated and say something, to bring awareness to all of those moments of the day, not just in meditation, not just in formal practice. So as I noticed how we were living, I thought, I'm really learning what I came to learn. I'm learning how to nourish happiness in myself and others, how to take care of the pain, the suffering in me, how to avoid causing unnecessary pain for others. That's a lifelong journey. It's not that we achieve it perfectly, but we can get more and more skillful the more we start to get to know ourselves. And so his insight was so vast and deep and embodied. It was really in every step he took was very deeply. He was really present with every step, and it was a very special thing to be around someone with that kind of energy. It was like it permeated you when you were around him. This sense of let me not take this moment for granted. Let me be very aware of what I'm doing, of how I'm living. And so this was impressed me very deeply as a young person. I had just never met anyone who was so present, whose presence was so powerful. He didn't have to say anything, but just his presence, and you just felt something had shifted, and everyone could feel it. So it was like just touching a tangible piece that I had never experienced before. So there's a phrase in the Plum Village chanting book, one of the chants that we have, that says, "Once I have a path, I have nothing more to fear." And I was really looking, at that age, I was looking to my friends, I was looking to my professors, I was looking to my society about how should I live? How should I consider relationships? How should I, be in, how do I act with integrity? I was very much looking, and I wasn't really, it still wasn't clear after doing, a bachelor's and master's and traveling and doing research and, doing a lot of things intellectually. I didn't feel like I had a very clear ethical path. And when I came to Plum Village and I learned 5 mindfulness trainings, these ethical guidelines of how to live, to not create unnecessary suffering for ourselves and others, I was so relieved. I was like, oh, this is what I've been looking for this whole time, like since my teenage years. So I really touched that phrase, once I have a path, I have nothing more to fear. Doesn't mean that you can just live it perfectly, and that's not even the point, but you know the path you're going on, and if you just walk on that path, you know you're going to get to the destination that you want to get to, right? So so there was just this freedom that came from finding something that was just so clear and that resonated so much with me. And I knew it was going to be my life's path. And even though the monastic expression of it hasn't been my life's path, because I did disrobe after 15 years as a nun, this path of practicing mindfulness moment to moment, I know will be my life's path. And so when I reflect on what was the most important thing he taught me, it was love. He really loved me, and I knew it, and I felt it in every fiber of my being. And this wasn't the love of like making me feel good all the time. This was the love of knowing he had confidence in my ability to be my best self, and him revealing to me that I was much more than I thought. Not in an egoic sense, but that I was really able to be powerful by being connected to the life around me and not seeing myself as separate and cut off from that life. That trust that he had in each and every one of us, that we could realize the deepest, most beautiful parts of ourselves, which each of us has, right? And sometimes the way he would help us see that was not pleasant at all. He would point out very clearly what were the obstacles in us to that deep nobility. And that would be very confronting, very challenging. But that's what a Zen master does. A Zen master tells you the truth, whether it feels good or not. But that's what I mean when that's real love, right? That's real love, to tell you the truth. So he had thousands of monastic and lay disciples all over the world. And he had this way of deeply connecting with many, many, many people. And many, many people felt deeply cared for, deeply guided by him. I knew that he very much appreciated my family's history. He had a very close relationship with Dr. King, and because my dad had worked with him in the civil rights movement, that was always a point of connection, of appreciation. I was the first monastic to ordain in the community of African American heritage, as a biracial and Black person, and that was, I think, important for me, for the community. And he really embraced my family. All of my family ended up coming to practice as well. My father, who is a Christian minister, also became a Buddhist lay Dharma teacher and became super dedicated to our community and practice, very wholeheartedly, coming for 3-month-long retreats, going on trips with Thai, even trips I didn't get to go on, my dad would go on. So me and my dad would teach together. So my dad was already blending, weaving, the Christian and Buddhist tradition, but he was a very, very loving student of Thai as well. So, so soon after I ordained, when I was 25. So when I ordained, he gave me the name True Adornment with Jewel. He gave all of us our names, brothers and sisters, and it was Chan Châu Nghiêm in Vietnamese. And so we each had a chance as novices to be his attendant in pairs. So two of us, when he would visit our hamlet, we would, care for him throughout the day. And as a novice, I found myself struggling with an elder sister who had a lot of suffering and could sometimes be harsh in her speech. And I was struggling with this as a new member of the community. And so one day when I was attending Thai, after lunch, when we were all resting and we had served him tea, he was lying in his hammock. We were sitting there. And somehow he knew this. I hadn't told him anything. And in a quiet moment, as he was just swinging in the hammock, he looked at me and he said softly, "You know, Châu Nghiêm, other people are the path." He didn't say much more than that, but I knew what he was talking about. That this path of awakening does not lead us around or outside of difficult relationships. It's not about avoiding difficult people, but our relationships, other people, including and especially the difficult people, they are the very path we need to walk on, right? They are the conditions that help us learn to be more free, more awake. And so he had often taught that living in community was like washing a bunch of chopsticks after a meal, which was how they would wash them before, in early days as a young monk in Vietnam, when they didn't have soap, they would just rub all the chopsticks together roughly to get the rice off of them. And they clean each other. And so he used that as a metaphor for community life, monastic life. The abrasion is painful, but it is transformative, it is cleansing, it's purifying. It's not always pleasant. So that simple teaching was very supportive for me that day, and it has stayed with me ever since. This reminder that when interactions with others become difficult, that learning to work with and reconcile with others is the very purpose of the path and not some mistake, not something that we have to get away from. So another aspect of his transmission to us was his insistence, as I mentioned earlier, on doing things with our full being. And so he had this habit of asking his students. He would come, through the monastery and find a sister or brother cooking or sweeping or doing something, and would ask them, "What are you doing?" And it was obvious what they were doing, right? I mean, so if the student would say, "Well, I'm cutting carrots," that wouldn't be the answer Thai was looking for. The answer was, "I'm being present in this moment." That's why he asked us that question. What are you doing? Do you know what you're doing? Are you fully here? And so we had mindfulness poems to help us be attentive to each and everything. We were supposed to memorize them as novices. We had about 50 poems for the moment you woke up. You had a 4-verse poem that you would recite. One line with your in-breath, one line with your out-breath, another line with your in-breath, another line with your out-breath. And then there was another poem for when you open the window, and another poem for when you dressed in your robe, and another one for when you brush your teeth. And another one for taking out the trash. And every moment of the day, there was this, intention to live that moment deeply and not let it be lost by being on autopilot, where we're just caught up in our thinking and we don't know what's actually going on. So I remember one of the things that he taught us, I didn't practice this very well, was to not walk and talk at the same time. That if we were walking, we should not be talking. And so if you were ever with him, like walking somewhere with him, and you started to talk, he would stop and listen to you. And when you finished the exchange, then he would continue walking. It's a very advanced practice, just doing one thing at a time. And I remember he made us stickers that said 100% that we could stick in the bottom of our shoe. When you put your foot in on the sole, you were supposed to stick it right there where you could see it before you would put your shoes on. That would say 100%, so that it would remind us we were to walk mindfully with 100% of our being, not with our mind somewhere else, not in a conversation, but feeling each step as we walked. So there's a beautiful story of when Thomas Merton and Thai had a visit at Gethsemane, the Abbey of Gethsemane. They were conversing late into the night, and they talked about each other's monastic traditions, about monastic formation. They talked about the Vietnam War, and they both found each other so easy to connect with. Thai described Merton as he was open to everything. He wanted to know more and more. He didn't talk so much about himself. He was constantly asking questions, and then he would listen. He said, I was impressed by his capacity for dialogue. And then the next day, Thai was supposed to give a talk to the monks of Gethsemane, but he had lost his voice. He was traveling through the US calling for peace and had a very demanding schedule. So Merton stepped in and spoke to the community about their conversation together. And this talk was recorded, and he described how impressed he was with Thai. And he talked about him as an extremely simple, humble person, and that Nhat Hanh was a completely formed monk with whom he felt in complete contact. He also wrote a letter to, after this visit, to recommend him for the Nobel Peace Prize. And he wrote an essay after that called Nhat Hanh is My Brother, where he expressed his love for Nhat Hanh. And he said, we are brothers, and I have far more in common with him than I have with many Americans, and I do not hesitate to say it. And so one of the things that he said in that talk, which was recorded, was that he is a true monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, because he takes such exquisite care of opening and closing the door with awareness. He was very impressed to notice how Thai opened the door with awareness, closed it with awareness, not as an afterthought. So years later, like 20 years later, a Catholic woman came to practice in Plum Village. And at the end of her week with the community, she relayed to the community that the reason she came was to watch Thich Nhat Hanh open and close the doors, because of that tape that she had heard Merton talking about how he closed the door. So he is one of the Buddhist teachers who has really, I think, offered a great deal to the Buddhist Christian dialogue, writing 2 books, one Living Buddha, Living Christ, and the other Going Home, Jesus and Buddha as Brothers. And he encouraged many Christians who came to practice, who were somewhat disillusioned with their tradition. He said it's really important to go back and reclaim the gifts of your tradition, to reconnect to your spiritual roots. That was his message to Christians. Don't leave, but go back and discover the beauty of your own tradition. So, another story, he was an activist, right, in the war in Vietnam, calling for peace. He was friends with Daniel Berrigan, the Berrigan brothers, John Deere, many of the Catholic nonviolent, spiritual warriors, and yet he also was a contemplative activist. He knew about the importance of deeply nourishing ourselves in order to be able to be effective in our work for change. And so this happened when we were in a bus. A number of us monastics were traveling with Thai from Southern California, where we had a monastery, still today, Deer Park Monastery, near San Diego. We were driving up to Northern California, where Thai was to give a talk at Berkeley, a public talk. We were on the US tour. And this was 9/11, 2001, and we were hearing on the bus, on our Walkmans in those days, the news of the Twin Towers being attacked, and we were very, very disturbed by this news. And so those of us from the US monastics, we thought, let us get into action. Let's figure out how to go. As soon as we arrive, the next day we'll go to our publishing house, Parallax Press. We'll pull up files that we need to help Thai create a press release so that we can really be responsive immediately to this disaster. So we arrived in Northern California, and we went to Thai, where he was staying, and we asked permission, could we go the next day to do this? And Thai said, no. He said, tomorrow we're going to the beach. And we were not expecting that response. And yet we all went to the beach the next day, and we rested, we nourished ourselves by the beauty of this ocean and beach. We had a meal, picnic on the beach, we played games, we swam in the ocean. And the next day after that, we did all the things we had planned to do. But it was a very powerful teaching that we don't base our action in reactivity. When we feel anxious, when we feel afraid, when we feel stressed, we actually need to come from a place that is peaceful, right? This teaching, There Is No Way to Peace. Peace is the Way, by A.J. Muste, right? We have to be peace in every moment to bring about peace. And I remember my dad sharing. So of course, we took this day, but then it's not like Thai wasn't very much responsive to what was going on. He was just teaching us where we need to come from in order to be really effective. So then he was at ground zero. I wasn't there in New York with him, but we were all doing a 2-week fast. Thai was doing a 2-week fast, and we all wanted to join him to really not be reactive in this moment of so much pain and the stirring up of hatred. of fear. So my dad got to be with him as Thai was giving, interview after interview with reporters for hours in New York City, as people were just coming to ask, what do we do? What's your perspective? How do we move forward? And so my dad, after many interviews, asked Thai, who by then was in his, late 70s, how do you have the energy to do all these interviews? And Thai looked away and then just said, it's not me, it's the ancestors. I am not doing this as an individual. It's the ancestors that are helping. So not only our blood ancestors, but all the saints, all the sages, all the bodhisattvas, they are right here. So that's really a not self practice, to be so emptied out that you can draw upon this energy, this wisdom, this clarity whenever you need it. Because all of the saints and the wise ones are available to us. Right? That's the practice we're going to do in just a moment of touching the earth, is to get in touch with these streams that flow through us all the time if we are just open to connecting with them. So let me move into this practice now of touching the earth, because it was a practice that Thai created, that he used himself to transform his own difficulties, his own sense of separation, and he taught it as a foundational practice in our community. So I'll introduce it a little bit and then we'll have a chance to do it together. So this is a practice of returning to the earth. We touch the earth, right? Just in every tradition, there is a practice of prostrations, whether it's the Christian practice of laying our body on the earth or even kneeling to the earth, whether it's the Muslim tradition of kneeling and praying and bowing our head to touch the earth, whether it's the Hindu tradition of touching the earth, touching the Guru's feet at the earth. So many traditions have this practice of, get down, get close to the earth in order to transform your mind. Even physically, if you're kneeling and your head is touching the earth, then your head is lower than your heart, right? Sometimes we need that physical changing up, because sometimes our heart needs to guide us more than our head. So this is a practice of connecting with our roots, with our ancestors, to recognize that we're not alone, but that we are part of this stream of spiritual and blood ancestors that flows through us. We are their continuation, and with them we will continue into the future, in future generations, whether we have biological children or not. Those that we influence, those that we mentor, those that we support, they are our continuation, maybe our spiritual continuation. So when we touch the earth, we let go of the idea that we are separate, and we remind ourselves that we are the earth, that we are part of life. And we become small. If we go into child's pose, which is one of the positions we practice this in, it's like you touch and open yourself to the humility and simplicity of a child. We turn our palms upward in a gesture of receptivity, surrender, openness. We have nothing to hide, right? This gesture of open communication. We are open, and we are open to receive, to give and receive. So when we touch the earth, we have a chance to connect with the stability and strength of the earth, and to also release our suffering release our anger, our hatred and fear, our inadequacy, our grief onto the earth. And so the way we practice it in our tradition is we join our palms to start, a gesture of respect. You can think of it as bringing your mind and your body together, forming a lotus bud, this symbol of awakening. It means we're fully present. And then if we are doing this formally, we would be standing and we would bring our hands to our forehead, to our heart, and then open and then lay our body on the ground, either fully flat on the ground, a full prostration, or we would kneel and rest our forehead on the ground with all of our limbs. And we can always make adjustments so that it's comfortable for us. We can lay our head on a pillow. We could just simply, sit on the floor and touch the earth with our hands if it doesn't feel comfortable to bring our head down to the floor. Or even if we're just in a chair, we can just visualize that we're prostrating, or just send our energy down through our feet. There's many ways we can adapt this practice so that it works for our body. We want to be comfortable. We want to be relaxed. And so when we've made the gesture, whatever we're going to be doing, when we are in that position, then someone reads the contemplation, and when it's done, then we stand up and we take a few breaths, and then we prostrate again. So it's 5 times. And in this practice, there are many different kinds of touchings of the earth in Plum Village tradition. There's the 3 touchings of the earth. There's different kinds of contemplations, but this one I'll share is the 5 that helps us first to connect with our blood ancestors, and then our spiritual ancestors, and then our land ancestors, those who created and supported the country, the land that we live in and that we can take refuge in. And then the 4th touching of the earth is to send, it's like the first 3 are us connecting with all the good that we have received from all the different streams. And also part of the practice too is to say, and I know I've received suffering too from my blood, spiritual and land ancestors, and I pour that on the earth so that it can be transformed, because we don't want to continue that suffering and pass it on to future generations. So it's a very a lot of composting can happen in this practice, right? Where we let go of things that we realize, oh, I don't want to keep transmitting this, even though it was transmitted to me. But we get clear, this is where I come from, these 3 streams. And then in the 4th touching the earth, we pass on our love to those we love. We wish them well. We ask them to be supported by all of the ancestors, by the saints and sages. And then the 5th touching of the earth is what Jesus taught us, love your enemies. It's also sending love to those who have hurt us, to those who have harmed us. So it's a forgiveness practice as well. So I'm going to share the traditional practice as it's shared in the Plum Village tradition. But the encouragement, if this speaks to you, is to write a version that is appropriate for you. So I'll mention people from the US when I talk about land ancestors. If you come from another country, you might substitute other people's names. Or I may say kind of general things about blood ancestors, spiritual ancestors, land ancestors. You might think about your own lineage and get a lot more specific to your people, what you feel are their gifts and what are the sufferings that they passed on to you that you want to transform. So we'll do this now, and you are welcome to try out the full practice of standing and then joining your palms, and then forehead, heart, and then kneeling down on the earth, laying your forehead on the earth. Or you can try this from seated, maybe with your eyes closed, or you can try this seated on the ground, touching the earth with your hands. Or you can try fully lying on the ground with each contemplation. So it's up to you to decide what will work best for you. there will be, I will say the first line of which touching the earth it is. I'll invite the bell, and then you can prostrate or stay in the same position. Then I'll read the text out loud, and then I'll offer another bell to let you know, now we can stand back up. Now we're transitioning, we have a pause, and then I'll read the next line so you know who we're touching the earth to next. So I'll invite one sound of the bell for us to begin. Just breathing, relaxing the body, feeling the weight of the body on the earth. In gratitude, I bow to all generations of ancestors in my blood family. And here we touch the earth, in whatever way you're doing it. I see my mother and father, whose blood, flesh, and vitality are circulating in my own veins and nourishing every cell in me. Through them, I see my 4 grandparents. Their expectations, experiences, and wisdom have been transmitted from so many generations of ancestors. I carry in me the life, blood, experience, wisdom, happiness, and sorrow of all generations. The suffering and all the elements that need to be transformed, I am practicing to transform. I open my heart, flesh, and bones to receive the energy of insight, love, and experience transmitted to me by all my ancestors. I see my roots in my father, mother, grandfathers, grandmothers, and all my ancestors. I know I am only the continuation of this ancestral lineage. Please support, protect, and transmit to me your energy. I know wherever children and grandchildren are, ancestors are there also. I know that parents always love and support their children and grandchildren, although they are not always able to express it skillfully because of difficulties they themselves encountered. I see that my ancestors tried to build a way of life based on gratitude, joy, confidence, respect, and loving kindness. As a continuation of my ancestors, I bow deeply and allow their energy to flow through me. I ask my ancestors for their support, protection, and strength. So we take 3 breaths together here. And with this spell we stand. In gratitude, I bow to all generations of ancestors in my spiritual family. And then we touch the earth in whatever way. I see in myself my teachers, the ones who show me the way of love and understanding, the way to breathe, smile, forgive, and live deeply in the present moment. I see through my teachers, all teachers over many generations and traditions, going back to the ones who began my spiritual family thousands of years ago. I see the Buddha or Christ or the matriarchs and patriarchs as my teachers, and also as my spiritual ancestors. I see that their energy and that of many generations of teachers has entered me and is creating peace, joy, understanding, and loving kindness in me. I know that the energy of these teachers has deeply transformed the world. Without all of these spiritual ancestors, I would not know the way to practice to bring peace and happiness into my life and into the lives of my family and society. I open my heart and my body to receive the energy of understanding, loving kindness, and protection from the awakened ones, their teachings, and the community of practice over many generations. I am their continuation. I ask these spiritual ancestors to transmit to me their infinite source of energy, peace, stability, understanding, and love. I vow to practice to transform the suffering in myself and the world, and to transmit their energy to future generations of practitioners. My spiritual ancestors may have had their own difficulties and not always been able to transmit the teachings, but I accept them as they are. So you take 3 breaths together here, contemplating this touching of the earth. And then we stand. In gratitude, I bow to this land and all of the ancestors who made it available. Then we can touch the earth. I see that I am whole, protected, and nourished by this land and all of the living beings who have been here and made life easy and possible for me through all their efforts. I see Chief Seattle, Dorothy Day, Cesar Chavez, Martin Luther King Jr., and all the many others known and unknown. I see all those who have made this country a refuge for people of so many origins and colors by their talent, perseverance, and love. Those who have worked hard to build schools, hospitals, bridges, and roads, to protect human rights, to develop science and technology, and to fight for freedom and social justice. I see myself touching my ancestors of Native American origin who have lived on this land for such a long time and known the ways to live in peace and harmony with nature, protecting the mountains, forests, animals, vegetation, and minerals of this land. I feel the energy of this land penetrating my body and soul, supporting and accepting me. I vow to cultivate and maintain this energy and transmit it to future generations. I vow to contribute my part in transforming the violence, hatred, and delusion that still lie deep in the collective consciousness of this society, so that future generations will have more safety, joy, and peace. I ask this land for its protection and support. And we can stand. In gratitude and compassion, I bow down and transmit my energy to those I love. and touch the earth. All the energy I have received, I now want to transmit to my parents, everyone I love, all who have suffered and worried because of me and for my sake. I know I have not been mindful enough in my daily life. I also know that those who love me have had their own difficulties. They have suffered because they were not lucky enough to have an environment that encouraged their full development. I transmit my energy to my parents, my siblings, my beloved ones, my partner, my daughter, my son, my children, so that their pain will be relieved, so they can smile and feel the joy of being alive. I want all of them to be healthy and joyful. I know that when they are happy, I will also be happy. I release my resentment towards any of them. I pray that all ancestors in my blood and spiritual families will focus their energies towards each of them to protect and support them. I know that I am not separate from them. I am one with those I love. And here we can stand. In understanding and compassion, I bow down to reconcile myself with all those who have made me suffer. We make our prostration. I open my heart and send forth my energy of love and understanding to everyone who has made me suffer, to those who have destroyed much of my life and the lives of those I love. I know now that these people have themselves undergone a lot of suffering and that their hearts are overloaded with pain, anger, and hatred. I know that anyone who suffers that much will make those around them suffer. I know they may have been unlucky, never having the chance to be cared for and loved. Life and society have dealt them so many hardships. They have been wronged and abused. They have not been guided in the path of mindful living. They have accumulated wrong perceptions about life, about me, and about us. They have wronged us and the people we love. I pray to my ancestors in my blood and spiritual families to channel to these persons who have made us suffer the energy of love and protection so that their hearts will be able to receive the nectar of love and blossom like a flower. I pray that they can be transformed to experience the joy of living so that they will not continue to make themselves and others suffer. I see their suffering and do not want to hold any feelings of hatred or anger in myself toward them. I do not want them to suffer. I channel my energy of love and understanding to them and ask all my ancestors to help them. You can stand, just noticing how this feels, how your body feels. We'll breathe one more time with the bell. In and out 3 times. So thank you so much for your practice. That is the practice of the 5 touchings of the earth. I think we have less than 15 minutes now for questions or reflections. If you wish to place a word or phrase in the chat of something you noticed from doing the 5 touchings of the earth, you're welcome to share anything that arose for you in that practice. And if you have a question, you can also write it in the chat, and we'll, I guess, call on you. You can raise your hand, and then you can ask your question. So someone is sharing after the 5 touchings of the earth, they feel more at peace, embrace, and being embraced. Beautiful reflections, deep gratitude, profound transformation and healing. Connected to all, touched my deepest peace. I'm thirsty for more knowledge and practice. How? Free. Thank you for these reflections. There are many, touch my deepest self. Beautiful. Thank you for these reflections. And Sue, yes, the book Art of Living, thank you for sharing that. Someone else shares, I like the recognition that those who made us suffer had suffered or were not mindful themselves. Yes. Yes. And Anna says, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. So, yes, the floor is open now if you would like to ask a question or offer a reflection of some sort. Someone else says, deeply nourishing, much wisdom in what you said, very peaceful. So we have a question, how does your Buddhist Christian community practice? Thank you for that question, Fran. So we meet on usually the 3rd Tuesday of the month from 8 till 9:30 Eastern. So we have 90 minutes. So my husband is an Episcopal priest, Adam Bucko. And so we begin with a practice. One of us leads either a Buddhist-inspired or Christian-inspired practice, a contemplative practice. And then the other person gives a talk on a particular topic. We've been meeting a year and a half or more since the beginning of 2022. So we've talked about what are the essential features of a spiritual practice? What does success mean in spiritual life? What does it mean to fast and pray? How do we rest deeply as a spiritual practice? We've talked about climate change and engagement from both traditions. So there's a contemplative practice by one of us, and then the other gives a talk. And then there's breakout groups with a prompt for us to talk in community about how we live some aspect of the teaching. And then we come back and there's a question and response time. And then we end with a Buddhist Christian prayer, a beautiful prayer, interweaving St. Francis's prayer and the prayer of Shantideva, Tibetan Bodhisattva. So you are most welcome to come and try it out if you want.
Kaira Jewel, can you share the best way for people to find out more about that community and your group?
Sure, I'll put the information in the chat.
Great. And we also had someone ask me directly if there is a way to get the prayer that you shared for all 5 aspects of our ancestry.
Sure, I can put that. It's from Plum Village website, plumvillage.org. If you even just do a Google search of the 5 touchings of the earth, Plum Village, you'll pull it up, but I'll find the link and share it with you too. But
Great. That's
first,
really helpful.
yeah, thank you for that. Here in the chat now is the link to how to register for the Buddhist Christian community of meditation and action each month. And then I'll put now the link to the 5 touchings of the earth. If you also wish to download the free Plum Village app, it's just called the Plum Village app. It's free. There is guided practice you can listen to and be guided in the 5 touchings of the earth, the 3 touchings of the earth, and I think several other versions, very beautiful versions of this practice. Some of it's connecting with Mother Earth, recognizing how, as humans, we need to live differently on the earth to protect the earth more, to connect to our sibling species and see ourselves as one with the earth. So there's many beautiful practices on the website. Oh, and the question, where can we find out more about the Plum Village poems you mentioned for daily mindfulness? The book Present Moment, Wonderful Moment, which I'll put in the chat, it has all the gathas, the mindfulness poems that we practice. And they're also on the Plum Village website as well, many of them. But you can get this book if you wish. And Sue had your hand raised. And there's also a question in the chat. But Sue, did you want to speak?
Yeah, sure. I wanted to ask you, how has this changed you?
This 5 touchings of the earth practice?
Just being at Plum Village, just, walking into it all at a young age, and then now, how has it changed you?
Well, I feel it's really given me a direction for my whole life that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Like, this is just what I want to be about for the rest of my life. And so I feel, I don't feel confused about what I'm here to do, and so the basic essence I feel of what's important to me is the through line that hasn't changed since the first time I went to Plum Village. This sense of the bodhisattva vow, this bodhisattva path that we can each take of, living in service of the whole, and knowing that I have a path, that this path is so vast, it's so trustworthy, and that I can go deeper and deeper. I can learn more and more. I'll never get to the end of it. Like I will need to learn every day of my life. And I like that, So it's just this sense of, there's a beautiful saying, one teacher in India, Munindraji, said to his students, he said, the Dharma protects those who protect the Dharma. So you will be cared for when you live in alignment with what you are here to do, when that is for the benefit of all beings. And I really feel that. I really feel that I am protected and guided because of this spiritual path.
Wonderful.
Thank you for the question. So Mary Beth has a question in the chat. I have worked in social justice work and spaces for many years. Lately, I am finding these spaces interlocked in dualistic approaches, with lots of anger arising, particularly among people of color related to white participants. How do we work together in these spaces most effectively? Thank you for this question, Mary Beth. Yes, there's a lot of healing that needs to be done in our communities, in our own hearts. And I think there's an important role of compassion for the suffering of others who have experienced a lot of oppression and injustice. And, just because we work together in social justice work doesn't mean that those oppressions don't continue, that we don't still hurt each other in pretty deep ways because of our ignorance, because of our conditioning. And so compassion for ourselves is really important. Compassion for people who feel angry and hurt is important. One of the things that I was part of in my time as a nun and since was creating spaces for people of color to practice, to have a kind of safety where people didn't feel like they had to be on their guard, which can sometimes be the case, even in a spiritual community. And so I think sometimes when racial issues are quite inflamed, it can be helpful to work in affinity groups if there's skilled facilitation that's available for both a separate white group, a separate BIPOC group, for folks to reflect in solidarity with others what's going on and what can be done to heal, and then to come back together. So that can be a skillful way, is sometimes there needs to be a little bit of space. Because otherwise it's like, the wound gets re-inflamed, re-wounded over and over, and the healing can't happen. The space isn't there for the calming of the nervous systems and the, recalibrating. And there are wonderful groups that are doing very important work where racial justice, racial healing is a part of the work. So there are great examples out there of how to do that and keep working together. So maybe learning from those that are finding good ways to do it. Yeah, thank you for that question. I think maybe I can answer one last question that just appeared in the chat. Okay, from Connie. Do you have any insights on how one identifies one's true path? Yeah, thank you for that question. I think I have found embodying my physical experience to be a very helpful practice. So like when I found Thai, my body knew probably faster than my mind knew, or when you enter a place and you're not sure, or you read a book, or you're looking for a teacher, for a path, listen to your body. What is your body saying? Sometimes we can get confused at the level of our mind, but often our bodies have clarity. We can listen to the wisdom of our body. And we also want to listen to the wisdom of people we trust and who are wise. Thai would say, use your Sangha eye. Sangha means spiritual community. Use your community wisdom when you don't know what to do. So it may be that we need to talk to people who have wisdom, who we trust, and get clarity from others as well on, maybe it's not this, or maybe we need to go more in this direction, but also really checking in with the body to see what does our body say about where we feel at home.
Beautiful. That's so beautifully piggybacks on what Heather was sharing with us about listening to our bodies. And so often our ancestors speak to us through our bodies. It's such an important way of getting through to us sometimes. So, Kaira Jewel, thank you so much. You have definitely gifted us with many precious, important jewels, and we thank you for that. And may we all find our very special, unique bodhisattva paths and serve our communities, our world, in the way that we were created to, just as you have. Thank you for being an inspiration to us. Let's all share a really nice round of waving hands for Kaira Jewel for sharing her love and wisdom with us.